have a look at the fight, because we've actually not looked at the fight over the weekend. The word robbery got thrown about a lot after Saturday night, and by a lot of credible people, a lot of people that, at events week in, week out, watch events week in, week out. And if you look at unified scoring criteria, it wasn't a robbery. Now, I watched the fight the first time, and I thought Jared Gordon won. I thought he had it 29-28. I put a tweet out on CageChat MMA saying it could be 2-1 either way, or it could probably be 30-27 Jared. If you're going to go that way, I thought Jared, especially the third round, it could be that, watching it in real time. But when you look back at the criteria, when you take the criteria into account, round 3 is Paddy Pimbletts. Now, that's based off damage. When you look at the criteria, it says damage is the number one factor in this sport, when you're judging the sport and judging fights. And Paddy Pimblett does enough. Obviously, Jared Gordon, and it's pretty good to retrospectively look at this fight backwards on the timeline of things. And I saw Sean from Severe MMA on the Anakin Florian podcast doing the same thing. Paddy Jared actually gets him up against the cage, but he doesn't do anything with that. And unfortunately, in the scoring criteria, clinching and, that sort of grappling of not changing position, not striking, it doesn't count. Having control time isn't a high scoring factor within the criteria. So just having someone up against the cage for 2 or 3 minutes doesn't actually score. And when you got the person up against the cage elbowing you, punching into the back, no matter how much it hurts or what visible damage it does or etc., things like that, that's going to score high, because the judges can visibly see what's going on. They can visibly see a change in sort of the dynamics of the fight because of the extra strikes being landed. So Paddy Pimblett wins that round. And maybe that's something that the criteria later down the line is looking at. The first round is quite comfortably Jared's, in my opinion. I don't think Paddy Pimblett, and Joe Rogan was right, Paddy Pimblett couldn't be that confident going into the reading of the scorecards, because Jared Gordon clipped him with a few left hooks that were very nice. But we've seen obviously Paddy Pimblett take those sort of strikes through and come forward. So not to be too lenient on the judges, but I can see where they took it, because he took him so well that there wasn't a knockdown, there wasn't any cuts or bruises or any sort of significant visible damage where you go, actually, that's a clear 10-9 to Jared Gordon. It was more, he's clipped him a few times, but he's not actually hurting. He's not putting him on the canvas or anything like that. And obviously, there was a lot of leg kicks from Paddy, more a few strikes, more volume, I believe, from Paddy. And we'll have a look at the stats, actually, because I've actually got the stats from the UFC, UFCstats.com, of course. But yeah, round 1, 29 total strikes out of 70 for Paddy, but 40 out of 61 for Jared. Now, I thought Jared done more damage with those, which is sort of reference with the significant strike, 32 out of 53 for Jared, but 29 out of 70 for Paddy Pimblett. And we'll actually have a look at the actual results as a whole as I read out the round by round. Round 2, 28 out of 70 for Paddy. Significant strikes, that is 24 out of 46 significant strikes to Jared Gordon. 47 total out of 89 from Paddy. 39 out of 61 for Jared. Obviously, Jared did get the takedown and 2 minutes of control time. But again, the damage is the more significant factor in what the judges are looking at. And he did have more damage there, Paddy Pimblett. So there's an argument there why he got the round. So yes, I believe round 1 was Jared's, and I believe round 3 was Paddy's. So that makes it 1-1. So that automatically takes out the possibility there of really seeing, a 30-27 Jared Gordon state there. That puts a 29-28 scorecard in the right paths. Now it's just how you see round 2. That's the more determining factor of who wins this fight than the more or the less obvious round to score in the fight. It's the tougher round to score in the fight, because you do have the damage there from Paddy Pimblett. He has a much better round than the first round. But obviously Jared Gordon, he lands a couple hooks, not so many in the first round, which is where it tightens up. But it's a very even round, and with the 2 minutes of control time, there's only 3 minutes to work for him within the damage. Because I can't remember there being a lot of strikes on the ground. So yeah, that's the real determining factor. And I did give it Jared on the night, but I can see how Paddy Pimblett got getting that score, getting that round, and obviously winning the fight. The unanimous decision one, obviously with it being unanimous, it's difficult to really pinpoint the judges at fault, because obviously they're all reading off the same hymn sheet, so to speak, with the criteria. And there was a lot of talk about obviously Doug Crosby this weekend, because obviously he scored the Bellator fight between Sabatello and Raufeon Stots. Now that is a bigger issue for myself personally than the Paddy Pimblett fight, because the Pimblett versus Gordon fight probably highlights issues with the criteria more so than the actual judges. Now Doug Crosby is not the most favoured judge in MMA, and rightfully so probably. I've read a lot of articles about him this week, and a lot of there was things this weekend with fights that brings up a lot of questions. But the Paddy Pimblett Jared Gordon as a whole wasn't a robbery, wasn't a bad scorecard. It's just a very close fight, and I'm sure if you watch it 10 times, you might have it 6-4 either way. But Doug Crosby caused a problem this weekend with Sabatello and Stots. Now, fortunately for Stots, it was a problem that wasn't a determined factor in the outcome of the fight, but he scored it 50-45 in Sabatello's favour, and that's just not the case, because again, in this scoring criteria, damage is the highest factor. Now, I believe I had it 3-2, and the other two judges did have it 3-2 to Stots when I watched it on Sunday. And 50-45 just didn't happen. And that's a problem with the judging. That's not a problem with the criteria. That's a problem with the judging. And because he's the descendant scorecard and the lone judge that went that way, that's the one that I had a problem with, and that's the one that you have to look at as a singular issue, because he clearly didn't do his job right on Friday night. He may have done his job right Saturday night, and there's discussions should he even be working Saturday night if he'd been working Friday night in Connecticut and then traveling to Vegas the next day. But he'd done his job very poorly on Friday night. And Stots is very lucky because, one, that's in the Bellator Grand Prix, where $1 million is on the line in the final. And of course, he's currently the interim champion, so he could have lost both his title and the chance of winning $1 million. And that's something that Doug Crosby can't be taken, too lightly on, because, you're playing with careers at that point and playing with financial futures. Unfortunately, Stots is going on to face Patchy Mix, who look fantastic in Bellator, and we'll have to talk about that a little later on in the recap. But I agree with Ariel Helwani and those that have said you can't be scoring cards or scoring fights within 24 hours in different organizations. Bellator 286, I think it was a 288, took place in Connecticut on Friday night, and obviously the UFC took place on Vegas on Saturday. So within 24-hour period, he's flown pretty much the other side of the country, from East Coast to West Coast. So, I believe there should be a 36-hour rule. I saw something with the governor of California, again from Ariel Helwani, saying that if you're, judging a fight past Nevada, that you can't be within 24 hours of judging a fight within California, which I agree with. I think that's a good rule. Now, of course, judges like fighters are trying to pay their way and make a living, and of course they're not getting the fruitful labours as a fighter. And then we talk about fighter pay, but the judges are getting even less, although they're able to fight a lot or judge a lot more frequently, because obviously they're not taking damage, etc. Similar to refs. But scoring a fight is a high pressure situation, and it's a tiring situation. And when you're looking at 10 to 12 fights on a night, I know they're not scoring, they're probably scoring 4 or 5 maybe of those. But high pressure situations, especially the main event on Friday night, you can't be then going to the UFC and scoring again another high pressure situation at the co-main event. Within 24 hours, and there needs to be a 36-48 hour period. Maybe they even need to turn up on fight week with the fighters on a Wednesday. Maybe you book out the UFC, go right, we want you for this weekend, we're taking you from Wednesday. And maybe if there's an icon or something in let's say it's in Vegas again, let's say there's something in Vegas at the Apex, they can score that. Or maybe they can go to California, which is an hour away or 2 hours away, maybe, but they can't leave that vicinity too long. Maybe that's a way of looking at it. But yeah, the Paddy Pimblett Gordon fight was very close. Doug Crosby, like James Krause, might have just set new boundaries within the sport. James Krause is a whole different situation, of course, but Doug Crosby, has his judging future at risk, and rightfully so, for what he done to to Stots, the disrespect he gave to Stots. And again, there needs to be some education in here. There needs to be education to the fighters, because a lot of the fighters are coming to grips with the scoring criteria, but a lot of them don't know the scoring criteria. And that shows on social media. A lot of the media don't know the scoring criteria. There's a few that do, and again, a few that get into grips with it. But we're lucky in MMA because we have a unified scoring criteria. That doesn't exist in boxing. So we do all have work and somewhere to be able to review those criteria and all get on the same page. And then it comes to a point of, where is this criteria wrong for mixed martial arts? Because it is the boxing 10-must system that has been adopted for MMA. And it doesn't quite work because, again, Gordon has a legitimate claim for winning that third round outside the criteria. Because when you have control over someone for 3 minutes, that's a significant portion of the fight and portion of the round. And it is MMA. It's not boxing. It's not kickboxing where striking counts. It's MMA, and obviously grappling and wrestling is a part of that, and it should be scored as a part of that. And I know Joe Rogan comes up with this. Obviously, up against the fence, he doesn't like that. He wants to be almost on a mat, like in judo, taekwondo. But if you're, this is MMA. You should be able to defend the clinch and be able to get out of that position. If you can't, you lose that round. And I think that's fair enough. But there's something we need to look at, maybe at a more expanded score range. Maybe, different criteria needs to be met. Maybe you get control time over 3 minutes, it outweighs the damage. But we don't know, because if then he gets out of that 2 minutes and he knocks you down in the later 2 minutes, does it make it a 9-9, make it 10-10, etc.? It's a very difficult position to be in, but I think the sport is on the right path. I think the Doug Crosby situation needs to be dealt with. Then we look at the criteria, and then we can move on from that. Maybe expand the number of judges to 5. But again, Saturday's example doesn't change anything, because 3 out of 3 were unanimous in their decision. So are you just going to keep expanding until the person you believe won the fight was right? Does it take 10 judges to give Jared Gordon a 6-4 scorecard, or will they just be 10 out of 10, in favour of Paddy Pimblett? But I think, start with the Doug Crosby situation from Friday night. Work out what we're going to do with that, and judges being able to score fights within 24 hours with each other. Then let's have a look at the criteria. How can we make it better for MMA, and how can we implement wrestling and grappling into a more a higher scoring criteria than we currently have, and then we move on the sport from there. But yes, again, something in me says that if it wasn't Paddy Pimblett and it was someone else that is more unanimously liked by the MMA world, I don't think it would have got much heat. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe this night needs to get heat to see the sport develop and grow and change and be more beneficial. Had it been an early prelim fight that no one tuned into, or very few tuned into, then maybe it would be a different outcome. Maybe we just crack on as normal, because there's not much on the line. Well, there is a lot on the line for the fighters in the future, but in the grand scheme of things, in the UFC, it's not. Yeah, you can understand where I'm coming from. Where I say it doesn't mean, it doesn't mean as much as a co-main or main event title fight.